Hi there, Marvin Boss with BAASS Business Solutions. I'm a member of the development team, and I'm excited to show you something that we've put together as a utility to help with accounts receivable collections and generally helping with you to get some bills paid, we hope. So I'm going to turn off my camera and I'm going to share my screen. When we talk to customers about what they're looking for to enhance their Sage 300, a reply that we often get is that it's not that simple to do accounts receivable collections in a central spot, because there's often a lot of reporting that has to be done and generating PDFs of invoices and other documents so that they can be sent out to the customers and so on. So we have taken the initiative to develop a workbench style utility that'll allow you to do those things from one spot directly from your Sage 300 desktop. So this presentation is entitled AR Attachments, and while attachments are certainly a very important part of what I'm talking about, it expands beyond that to help with collections overall. So I have this new icon inside of my AR transactions folder, and we can put this icon wherever you like. And when I open it up, it opens up the tool. I'm just going to size the screen a little bit. All right, so this opens up to a blank screen, and I'm just going to draw your attention to a couple of the options up here at the top. We can choose to age by document date or age by due date. I'm going to leave that at document date. We have an option to show summary and detail. I'm going to leave this at summary for the time being, and I'll show you the detail later on. When we hit the refresh button, it goes into your Sage database and pulls out all of the accounts receivable and shows the aging buckets, as you can see here on the screen. So we have current 31 to 60, 61 to 90, 91, 120, and over 120, along with a total due. Now, I indicated a minute ago that I'm going to leave it at summary. And summary shows you one row for every customer, showing their total aging by the buckets indicated here. When the summary is selected, you see the screen, you see one row per customer, and you also see a plus sign beside them. By hitting the plus sign, it expands the grid right for that customer, and now you can also see one row for each of the invoices that are open. It's open documents, so there might be some credit notes and prepayments in here as well. Okay, so that is the very quick look at the summary. I'm going to close that up. When we take this selector and we switch it over to detail and we hit refresh, you'll notice that the screen changes. And now, instead of having one row for every single customer, we have one row for every single open document. Okay, and this is purely a preference thing for users. So I'm going to put it back to summary and hit refresh. So if you were tuned in earlier and you saw Fernando's presentation on the web reporting tool, you'll notice that a lot of the same type of functionality that he indicated in that grid for that reporting tool is also available here. The yellow line at the top of the grid is a filtering line. So you may choose to filter out and work with only one group. In this case, I'm going to choose the RTL customer group. And you'll notice that the grid immediately changes so that you only now have filtered rows that meet that group criteria. And you can also have multiple filters active. So in this case, I set the account set to be USA only. Okay, you can clear the filter conditions by hitting the little button on the right there. So now we're back and we see the entire listing of customers from Sample Company Limited. I should have mentioned that I'm running this inside of Sage 2020, and it is a desktop application, so it's launchable right from inside of your Sage desktop, and it has been tested on versions from and including Sage 2014. So if you haven't completely caught up yet with your version of Sage, this tool will more than likely run in your environment without any modification. Okay. You'll notice that there's a little heading up here that says drag a column header here to group by that column. So working with our group field again, I'm just going to take it and drag it right up here. And now you'll see that the grid has collapsed and we have one line for RTL with totals. We also have one line for WHL with totals. Okay, so if you're looking to work with the customers within the RTL, simply by hitting the plus sign beside them, it will show the customers associated for that particular group. And the groupings can be done in multiple nestings. There you go. So we remove the group, just drag it off of there, and now we're back. Each of the column headings is also a sort. So you may find it useful if you want to work with your most overdue customers, that if you click it twice, it'll now sort descending so that we can see that customer 1580 Breakaway Designs is $183,000 over 120 days. So they probably deserve to be called. If you wanted to look at the customer in more detail, you take the cursor and you can double click right on the customer column. Double clicking on the customer column will open up the customer screen directly from Sage. Okay, so anyone that you click on, if you wanted to give Breakaway a call, you say, okay, there's their phone number, terrific, I'm going to give them a call. So you get on the phone and you say to Breakaway Designs, we have a problem with invoice TRINV 005.1. It's very large and it is very overdue. So they get them on the phone and they say, okay, I didn't know that was still outstanding. I'm going to get a payment out to you as soon as we can. So down on the bottom portion of the screen, you'll see this line that says notes on the selected invoice. We've built in just a very simple little tickler note system where once you're on a particular invoice, you hit the add sign and the cursor shows up right here. Okay, the note says talk to customer, promised to pay. Okay. When you move off of the invoice, the note disappears because you're on a different row. Go back onto that invoice, and the notes show up. Okay. So that's a little bit about the collections piece. And you might be wondering, what about the attachments? Okay, well, I'm going to get to that right now. So if we open up on customer 1105, 1100, you may notice in the bottom right that there's a little documents box and the file name says in5.pdf. So that means that this particular invoice document has an attached file with that document name. I can double click on this and it will launch the PDF in whatever application you normally use to launch your PDF. In my case, I use a utility called PDF Exchange, although you would probably use something like Adobe Acrobat or something like that. Okay, so I'm just going to close that, and I can show you what you have to do in order to establish these links. There's two ways that we can have PDF representations of invoices and also of other documents. Up here on the menu, we have the PDF documents. There is Load PDF Documents, Edit, and also Invoice PDF Generator. I'm going to launch that now. This brings up a small screen that'll allow you to generate either accounts receivable or order entry invoices, and that's specified in the settings, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to produce PDF invoices for customer 1200, and I'm going to generate open invoices only. When I hit generate, it's a quick confirmation, and you'll see down here that it was generating IN ending in 61. Okay. When I go on customer 1200, Mr. Ronald Black, and I click on IN 61, let's do that again. I have to hit the refresh button. And now you'll see that IN 61 is there attached to this invoice. Okay. You can also load PDF documents from a specific folder, either on your computer or more than likely, it would be on a network folder accessible by multiple users. In my case, I'm just using a local folder called C Sage PDF files. The program recognizes that you are in SAM Ltd, and we have a special folder that we use called _process. So I've preloaded that folder, and I've dropped in two PDF documents, and they start with IN 7870 and INV Corp 003, and the program can read that and recognize that it is to attach to IN 7870 and INV Corp 03. If you're not sure what the document looks like, you can hit the preview and it'll show up beside here in a preview window. In this case, I've mocked up a very simple work order that is going to be tied to that particular invoice. And this one is a very simple schematic diagram that I found using a Google image search. So it's just to demonstrate that we can have multiple types of PDF documents. And yes, it supports PDF documents only for the time being. So it recognizes that it's attached to an invoice, and it also determines which customer. When we hit save, the rows disappear to indicate that those links are now saved in the database. When I go back to customer 1105, and It shows red because it didn't put them in, they're not in the folder. Okay, so not everything will always go 100%. But anyway, we know that those documents will link and they're in the right folder. All right, so going back to our friends up here at Bargain Mart, and we have IN36 is a good example. When you right click on an invoice, you'll get a send email menu option. When you hit send email for over a single invoice, the program will generate an email, and this will send it to the email address of record on the customer record and include that as an attachment on the email. If there are multiple documents attached to that invoice, they would all list here, and you have the option to include them on the email or not. If you wanted to see what the email looks like before you send it out, you hit the preview and it is attached to Outlook. And once my Outlook is running, there's the email there. Okay, so the body of the email is based on a email template code that it uses and pulls out of Sage. So I'm going to close that, and I'm not going to send it. And I am going to close that. If you are over a customer and you select send email on a customer, this will quickly gather up all of the open invoice documents that it has attached to invoices and will allow you to generate one email with all invoices attached. And here's that invoice. Okay, and I'm just going to close that. So that is a very quick look at the AR collections and an attachments tool that we have made. We are in the process of rolling this out. This is very, very new, but we are welcoming all and any feedback. We do have a few ideas in the mill, including if you have grouped or sorted or done something custom to your grid to save those settings by user as an example, so that every time you open up the application, the grid would look just as it was when you left it. Okay. I'm going to open up the settings page. If you have national accounts, they can be optionally included. And on the settings, you can also specify the aging buckets that you would like to use. So I'm going to save, hit refresh, and now you can see that national account is added on the left side of the grid. Okay. So on the email documents, you tell it where the PDF files are to be saved on the network, or where it's going to read them from, I should say. What's the email message code to use, and the statement template. And I didn't touch on statements, but the program will recognize if there is a statement that has been generated and will optionally allow you to include the last statement generated as part of the email that gets sent out. And on invoice generation, you have the option to use an accounts receivable or an order entry invoice, that template, and a couple other of options specific to order entry invoices only. Okay, and I will now open up for questions.
The first question I have here is, There are aging tools in Sage 300. In what situation would the AR attachment application be more useful to me?
One reason that people like this type of an application is because it is interactive. You can work very quickly with specific customers that you like to target. It allows you to very quickly generate and save PDF documents of invoices, all from within the same screen. And also, it allows you to take notes on uh, individual invoices. Okay, and it'll also track. So if you came back and said, "Oh, breakaway, you said that you were going to pay that invoice," it keeps track of the last time that you wrote a note in this screen. And there's one more feature very quickly, which is the export to Excel. And when you hit that, it takes the grid in whatever format it is on the screen and kicks it out to an Excel sheet that you are welcome to do whatever you like with. Take it to the cottage or work with it on your own, what have you.
Does this application change any data in Sage?
We've added 2 custom tables, one table to keep track of the notes that are written, and another one to keep track of the documents that are linked to invoices. It does not touch any receivables or financial data.
Can I add other customer columns such as phone number, address, etc.?
Very good point, and that's one of the things that we are looking at as a future enhancement to allow you to pull virtually anything you'd like onto the grid from the customer table.
Can I quickly look at my invoice in Sage by double-clicking it in the application?
As it stands now, that is not available. It is a good idea for an enhancement and definitely going on the list.
The last question I have here is the data displayed actual data? Is it always up to date?
Yes, it is actual data up to date based on the latest posted documents in accounts receivable.
It doesn't look like we have any questions coming in. So with that being said, I would just like to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy days to join us for BAASS Connect Virtual, Do More with Sage 300. We hope you found the sessions to be beneficial. All attendees should receive a survey today in just a moment at 3:45. And in order to receive a certificate of attendance, you will need to complete this survey. If you do not receive this email, please make sure that you check your junk box. As a reminder, all of today's sessions have been recorded and will be circulated to you. If you had asked any questions that were not answered, we will have someone from BAASS follow up with you directly. And as a reminder, our next event is this Thursday, November 26th on Navigating the Modern Workplace. We hope you can join us there. Thanks again, everyone.